In this video series, I'm going to go through the tutorials under the education.roblox.com website. If you go to Content and you scroll down to Tutorial Series, we're going to work on the Intro to World Building. And in these next few videos, we're going to go through all of these lessons. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to do the creating a building, and we're going to create something like this that looks like the Parthenon. All right, go ahead and open Roblox Studio, and let's choose flat terrain as our game template. And we can close out any of these side windows to give us a lot more space. So here we're going to start by adding a block. So click Model, and let's add a block. And notice that it puts the block way over there. And if I grab it, I can bring it right back here to where we can see it. Now, the fun part is, notice that we see the grass here on this terrain. And if I were to scale this, what's going to happen is you're going to see the grass through the block. And we don't really want that. So to fix that, let's just go to click on the terrain object under workspace. And then down here where it says decoration, go ahead and uncheck that. So that turns off the grass, so we don't really need it. In future videos, we'll show how to use things like grass, but in a more manageable way. So we've got our block. Now the first question is, how big should the building be? One way you can do that is by bringing in a dummy player for a reference so that you can see how tall you should build your buildings and objects. To do that, let's go over and click Plugins and click the Build Rig button. And here we pick the R15 and let's just click a block rig. And notice what it does is it adds this dummy to our screen. So now we have this reference and we can take a look at it. And we can see, okay, well now if this is the size of our characters and our players, then I want to make the building big enough so that they can walk around it and walk through it. Let's take a look at what this, let me show you one more thing. Go ahead and press play. And one thing that happens when you're testing and you're building in this kind of large terrain, I don't know why when you start creating and you build, you're like in the center of the screen, but then when you build, I think you're dropped into the center of this massive terrain. So let's just fix that, because you don't want to sit here and walk all the way over to our building. We don't want to do that every time. The other option, if I press stop, right now where I'm playing, what you could do is say, if you go to test and then you click down here at the bottom, you say play here, then it'll put you in the spot where your game is, which is good. But again, you kind of have to go there, and then, you know, once you press stop, then you always have to come back here and select play here, and then, you know, when you click play, that button's always available. So the fastest way is just go ahead and give yourself a spawn location. So click on the workspace, click the plus, and do spawn location, and then grab that spawn location, and let's just put it right here. And now when I go back, let's say I'm over here in my model view, and I click here and I click play. Now I want to start right here. Now of course I'm facing that direction, but that's okay. And here we go. So now we're ready to make our building. Let's go ahead and stop that. So for the building, you want to make a large flat floor, and then we're going to add a second floor that's slightly smaller. One thing you have to figure out is when you're making buildings, you want to align them properly, and one way to do that, you want to make sure that you have the rotate and move checked, so that when you rotate things, it rotates it according to the grid, and then you move things according to the grid. If these are unchecked, then you can move things freely, which is great for certain modeling, but when you're doing like buildings, it helps to have it snap to the grid. So make sure those two are checked. The other thing you want to make sure collisions are turned on. As you add more objects, we're going to be stacking them on top of each other, and we don't want them to blend in right now. So the other thing we want is to figure out how big this is. And so we have our reference guy. Now we want to make this kind of in equal measurements, because we're going to be making, you know, a four-sided building, and we're going to have columns and a roof. And one really helpful thing is you go to View and then click on Grid Materials. Now check this out. Now when I move this, there's this imaginary grid, and I can put things, and notice the grid is 4 studs by 4 studs. So you see this box here. So you see this box, you got 4 across and 4 down. So you have this grid, and as I move it, I'm lining it up with these imaginary lines. And so now when I build my game, notice when I build this object, if I resize this, notice that I can put it in exact increments. And so like right now, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 grid blocks wide. This way, when you're making geometric shapes, I mean, this is one way to do it, and other people have other ways. I'm fairly new to this. I don't claim to be an expert, but what I found is this helps me. So then you have this as a reference, and then you just turn it off, and then you got the material that you want. Speaking of material, let's go back to Model and go ahead and select, make sure that's selected, and then for the material, let's make marble, and for the color, you can make it kind of like a lighter color. So now we have this cool marble building texture. All right, let's do this. Let's go back. I'm going to turn on the grid materials so that I can see this a little easier. And that way, when I'm in this, I can see things. So now the question is, how tall should I make my building? And whoops, one way to do that is get familiar with the controls. And all right, let's go ahead and make this a grid. Let's select it, and if you don't already have, you know, the scale selected, remember you can use Command 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, or you can use Control if you're on a Windows machine. And let's just make this a little longer. So let's see. And notice I'm making it equal. I'm setting it equal so that I have this kind of balance. And again, you know, you can always play this and walk around and just see, hey, does this make sense? Is this like a reasonable size? And right now, it's a little short. Let's change that. Let's go back. And this is totally your preference. You can do it however you want. Let's make it a little bigger and then a little wider. Okay, now let's go ahead and duplicate this. So press Control D or Command D if you're on a Mac, and let's duplicate it. Now, if I press the letter F, then now I'm focused on it, and when I move my camera around, I can see it. So now I have this. There's a bottom and a top. So let's go ahead and just name these. We're going to say bottom floor, and then this top one is top floor. This just helps us keep things organized. Now we're going to scale this top one so that it creates a step. With it selected and you've got the scale selected, scale mode, go ahead and hold the Control key on a Windows or the Command key on a Mac and drag in, and notice what happens over here is it moved it equally on both sides. So now while I'm holding the Command key on a Mac or Control key on a Windows, I'm going to click and drag, and notice that it scaled it equally on both sides. So now I have this cool little step. All right, awesome. Let's go ahead and save this before we forget. And I'm just going to save this to file, and I'm going to call this Parthenon. Go ahead and save it. Next, let's go ahead and create some walls, and we're going to add another block to our screen, and we're going to scale it, and let's go ahead and scale it up so that let's give ourselves 2 grid widths. Let me press the letter F, zoom in on that, and let's move around so we can kind of see. Let's reduce the wall size so now it's there, and then let's make it tall. And again, you want to think about, here's my character. If I click in and I bring him over and I say, okay, how big is my door? Well, let's bring this in one size. So I have 2 blocks, 2 grids width on both sides. And then that's pretty good height for that wall. So now let's move my guy out of the way. And let's bring him up to the front, and again we're going to make this, I want to have, this is just my preference. You can do it however you want. You make this building as big as you want. I'm just thinking that I want this wall here, and so this we're going to click and call this front wall, and now we're going to duplicate it, and whoa, come here, and let's place it over here. And again, I'm going to place it about 2 grid sizes inside and out, and so now they should line up. Very nice. Okay, now let's duplicate this again, and this time let's move it out of the way. What we need to do is rotate this, but with collisions on, we're gonna bump into each other. So move it out of the way, and then let's rename this. I'm gonna call this side wall. And now you can, if you press Command R or Control R, it'll rotate it 90 degrees, which is what we want. So go ahead and click that, and then bring it in. Now let's press the letter F so I focus in on that, and let's line this up. Now I want to bring it in, and you can decide, how you want it. If you want to be on the inside of it like this, so that the front wall is on the outside, and then we just resize it. Come on, sometimes it gets stuck. What's going on here? Why is that stuck? Let's try that side. There we go. Sometimes the studio gets a little stuck, I'm not sure. Okay, so now see how it lines up and it's touching on the inside? So now guess what? Go ahead and duplicate that. And let's back ourselves up, and let's go ahead over there. Now press the letter F so we can focus in on it. And ooh, did I just place that right? Look at that. Wow. I didn't know I could do that. Okay, perfect. So now I've got 4 walls. 4 beautiful walls. Next, let's go ahead and create a door. So select this first one and press the letter F so we can focus on it, and then we can kind of pivot around it. And we want a door, and we know that our character is about this tall. So I want to make the door like this big. Let's do it this big. I want to make it this big so that so you have a grid width around the border. So what does that look like? Let's move our guy out of the way. One thing we need to do before I forget, let's double check that everything is anchored. So right now, if I press play, what happens? Let's see what happens. Everything seems to be staying put, but what if I walk into the walls? Is anything going to knock over? Nope, I guess it's okay. Wait, nope, look, I moved it. Hey, I'm going to be Hercules over here moving the wall. Okay, we got to fix that. We need to anchor everything. So you can either select everything like this, and then it selects our bottom floor, front wall. Let's go ahead and press Control or Command and select it. So now everything's selected, and then under model, everything, you click anchor. So now everything is anchored. So now if I select one of these, I can scroll down here and see that it's anchored. Okay, so now I can't move it. Alright, with this front one selected, let's go ahead and add another block. And we need to make our door. And we want to make our door about this wide. And it needs to be wider, you know, thicker than the wall. And then bring it up to about here. Well, see how you can read the grids like that? See that? So now that looks lined up. Perfect. So now we need to turn off collisions. And I'm going to switch to my move, and I'm just going to move this guy inside here. Now it splits the wall, so now what I'm going to do is turn this into to negate, or that now whatever this is combined with is going to remove whatever's it's touching. So now press Control and select. So now I have both of these selected. Now I'm going to click Union, and you can come over here to the Union, and we could say front door. Check it out. Perfect. So there's our door. Now let's test this out. Let's see how it looks. My guy is, how did he get so big? How come he's much bigger than me? I don't know why. I think I may have scaled him or something. Hey buddy, you talking to me? Okay. But for my player, it looks really good. You'll want to definitely play test these things, make sure everything looks right. But this looks like a good size to me. I'm happy with this. You can make this any size you want. All right. Remember, if you go back to view and you turn off the grid settings, then you're going to see the material and it'll look a lot nicer and cleaner. We don't need this guy anymore. I'm going to go ahead and select him and delete him. Okay. Next, let's add some pillars. So to do that, we're going to go back to model and we're going to add a cylinder. And where'd it go? Where'd it go? Make sure collisions are turned on. Where's my part? Oh, there it is. Come back here. Okay, now we're going to raise this guy up a little bit so that when we rotate him, he doesn't break, collide with anything. So go ahead and switch to the rotate, and then we're going to rotate at 90 degrees, and then go to move, and let's move this guy. Now, let's remember we want to see the grid, and this will help us figure out where we're going to place these. Now, when I look at this grid, I'm going to put a cylinder kind of in the corner of each one of these so that I can have something in the corner and then spaced out evenly. So to do that, let's bring him over to the corner, and we need to scale him up. And we want it to be the same height as the wall. So there, so notice it's that size. Now I want to scale this out a little bit, and check this out. If you focus in on this guy and then pull back a little bit, when you scale, you can then see where it fits on the grid. And now notice how it fits on the grid, and now I'm kind of centered on that little intersection, and so now it kind of has a nice geometric shape location. Okay, let's go ahead and give this a name, and we're going to say column, and let's make sure this is anchored. And the reason why is so every time you copy it, it copies, it's anchored. So remember, make sure your parts are anchored, that you don't want falling over. So now it's anchored. So now I'm going to duplicate, and I'm just going to start placing these. And you see how working with the snap to grid makes it so nice. And then the fact that you can see it, I really enjoy working with this. It makes it so nice. And see how you can see that they're perfectly laid out. So now let's keep going. And again, you can decide how you want to do this. I want to press the letter F to focus on that one so that I can pivot. Let's duplicate. Whoops, hey there. Why does occasionally collisions let you push through? And finally one more. Okay, look at that. So now we have our columns. So with those columns created, go ahead and hold down the Control or Command key and select every one of these so that these columns are selected. And now we're going to duplicate. And we're going to push these all the way to the back. Let's focus in and there we go. And now we can look at our grid. Whoops. There we go. Now let me just use the arrows, the move key. There we go. Perfect. Look at that. Oh, wait. I'm off. I'm off by a grid. Hold on. There we go. Now look at that. Now they line up nicely. Look at that. Okay. Go ahead and press duplicate and press Control R or Command R, and we're going to rotate these. Now the question, of course, is are these, how many do we need? So at this moment I've got these columns and I can select them and let's take a look. Okay, so it looks like I only need, if I line this up, I only need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. So go ahead and select away and select that column, delete it. I'm just holding Control or Command on a Mac. And so I've got all these selected, and now I want to bring these up. Now what happens is, of course, you can fix this because it's not quite deep enough. And what we can do then is let's go ahead and fix that. So grab our bottom floor and let's switch to scaling and let's bring it out. It looks like we need to add one block. Grab the second top floor and we're gonna grab that and bring it out one. And now I want to take these guys and I'm going to press and group multiple select and then go ahead and switch to the move tool. And okay, look at that. Whoops. Okay, look at that. See how that's working now? Now I have the right number going along the back. Now I just need to move my wall and I can set that up. Let me focus in on this wall and make sure when I grab the wall I'm moving it and it lines up on that wall, and there we go. And now we're going to resize the sides. Perfect. And same with that one. Resize it. Now look at that. Nice symmetrical nerdiness. I just like it to, I like it to be, I'm nerdy that way. Okay, let's go ahead and select these side columns and we're going to duplicate those and let's put them over here. Awesome. Okay, let's go to the front here, take a look, see how we are. Let's turn off the grid for a second and let's test this and see how it looks. All right, let's check it out. Hey, look at our columns. A nice big room. And wow, I can walk around the columns. They look cool. And if you wanted, you could give yourself more space so that you could, it would be easier to walk between things. Totally up to you. Again, everybody you kind of get a feel for it, but you can decide exactly how you want your spacing and everything. Awesome. Okay, let's go ahead and put a roof on this. We're about done. Let's make a roof. Okay, the fun thing is, so make sure, go back to model, make sure collisions are still turned on, and go ahead and grab this top floor and let's duplicate it and check out what happens. Because all of this material is in its way, it went to the highest spot and it automatically put it right in the spot that we needed. Look how slick that is. Okay, now let's call this top roof, or I should say bottom roof, because perfect. Now, next thing we want is a point, a peak to our roof. So to do that, let's first let's go back and turn on grid material so we can see our grid, so we can kind of make things nice and even. Go to model and let's add a wedge. Now there's our wedge, and if you look at this, you could say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So these are 12 grids wide. And if I rotate this, so I press Control R or Command R on a Mac, and I want to get this lined up. So basically we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the center of this is 6. So now when I scale this, I'm going to scale it all the way to the end, and then let's make it taller. And the height, you can decide how tall you want it. You kind of get a sense for right about there. That looks good to me. And then let's go ahead and run this all the way to the end. And if I come over here, run it all the way to the end. Perfect. Then well, let's rename this and we'll call it top roof. Now let's go ahead and duplicate that. Press Control R. Notice how it kept rotating it. Whoops, easy there. And then bring it in, bring it on home. Okay, look at that. Whoops, we're kind of overlapping a little bit. Sometimes it's easier to use the move tool. Okay. Perfect, look at that, nice. Now go ahead and let's go back to view and we'll turn off the grid. Now we have our awesome material. Oh, and one more thing, let's make sure these are anchored. So if I come over here and I select and I make sure they're anchored. Awesome. Make sure everything else is anchored so nothing falls over when you work with it. Okay, cool. Very good, let's go ahead and save that and let's test it out real quick. Awesome. We got a roof on this guy. We got a cool columns. I can turn around and take a look at this. That's a beautiful, beautiful building. Congratulations. See, that wasn't too hard. Now, it takes practice. I'm not going to lie. It takes practice, but you can do this. You can figure this out. It's something I'm learning all the time. I don't claim to be an expert, but I really think that anyone can learn to do this. So hopefully this was helpful to you. Please be sure to subscribe and check out the next video in this tutorial series.